Podcasting from the beautiful state of Maine, welcome to another episode of the Learning from Leaders podcast, the show that focuses on identifying and developing the skills and behaviors that will inspire, empower, and compel others to follow your lead. Listen as Patrick's guests talk about the powerful leadership approaches they have identified and developed, which are vital for leading in today's challenging times. These are the same approaches that will positively impact you as a leader too. Learning from Leaders provides the right balance of leadership research with real-world scenarios, making it easy for you to rise above your best. All right, let's start the show.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Patrick Verino. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Learning from Leaders. And on today's episode, I'm going to focus in on a recent research paper that was published in the Journal of Applied Psychology. And the purpose of this research was to examine the effectiveness of what they called gratitude interventions on reducing interpersonal workplace mistreatment. And I think that is such an important topic in terms of a lot of the work that I do when I go into work with groups and organizations. I see the negative impact that poor behaviors have within a team, and really that stretches out to within the organization, whether it's creating silos or just other unproductive, disruptive behaviors that really diminish the effectiveness of groups. And to me, this really caught my eye because it's something that I talk a lot about in terms of, I think its importance from leadership perspective, that gratitude or practicing gratitude has such an important impact on us internally. And that if we're not good within ourselves, we cannot externally be good or as good as we need to be for those around us. So let's get into it. As I mentioned, I'm really going to focus in on one piece of research here, but I'll bring in, I think, other examples or observations that I have in regards to this. But this was actually published recently, within the last month or so. And the title of the article is How a Gratitude Intervention Influences Workplace Mistreatment, a Multiple Mediation Model. And it was published in the Journal of Applied Psychology. The lead author on it was Lauren Locklear. Again, what I found interesting about this is that I put out a journal called the Power Journal, and one of the things that I stress in there is the first behavior I talk about is praise, is about the importance of demonstrating gratitude, practicing gratitude on a regular basis, how that impacts our own happiness, our own well-being, and I believe also our ability to be resilient or to create resilience. I don't think anybody would disagree that if we're looking for developing resilience or the need for resilience, it certainly is in the environment that we're in right now. So this piece of research, actually, they conducted two different studies. In the first study, what they did was they had participants over a 2-week period. They got notified every day at 3 p.m, and they were asked to journal about their workday. And basically, they could do it any time up until midnight of that night. And what they did was there was a control group in here. So the first group, the group that they're watching in terms of gratitude, what they prompted them with was asking them, try to think about as many things in your job/work, both large and small, which you're grateful. And it gave them some examples, right? Try to think of new ideas that you have not focused on in the past. So it's really forcing people to think about different things that they're grateful for. And I think that's really important. And it goes back to, again, I think work done by Shawn Achor in his 21-Day Happiness Challenge. And it's certainly something that I have promoted in the Power Journal that I created, is when we can challenge ourselves to think about different things that we're grateful for. What it allows us to do is really to recognize, boy, you know what? I didn't really think there were this many things that I could be grateful for. And the reason being is because I think as a society, we become so focused on the negative, what isn't going well, that we really need to frame shift here. And this is what this provides us the opportunity to do. Now, what's interesting is the second group in this first study, what they did was the only thing they were prompted, and what they were asked to do was try to think about as many things in your job work, both large and small, that affected you today. Now, very different, right? The first one is focused very much on things that you're grateful for. The other is just tell me about things that affected you today. Now, most might go in the direction of what didn't go well today? What things did impact me today? I didn't have the right resources. I didn't have enough time to do what I needed to get done. I didn't have the Wi-Fi connection I needed, whatever it is. We can see where the difference there can take place. What happened at the end of the 2 weeks is that in both groups, they asked those filling out the journaling exercise to also identify the name and contact of one of their coworkers. And then what happened is the following week, they would invite these coworkers to complete a survey, which they were asked to report basically on this person's behavior over the last 2 weeks. Now, in the second study, they basically followed this same format, but they delayed that request by another 2 weeks in terms of asking the coworkers to rate them. A few areas where employees or coworkers were questioned might have been around gossip. So the question could have gone something like, how often in the last 2 weeks has your coworker criticized a coworker while talking to another work colleague? So that was around gossip. To me, what's interesting about that is, again, I do a lot of work around the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and we do a series of workshops that are called the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. In that, the individuals on the team will fill out an assessment on the team's level of trust, their level of how they how they enter conflict with each other, how they gain commitment with each other, how they hold each other accountable, and how they are focused on the results that the team or the organization is focused on. And what's interesting is there are drop downs there. So employees can pick, if we were to improve trust, what would need to happen? And one of those areas is people can check that box of saying, you know what, if we were to increase trust within this team, then we would need to address gossip. There would need to be less gossip. And you'd be surprised how many times that comes up. So this speaks specifically to that. Now, the other thing is around ostracism. That was one of the other things they looked at. One of the questions that they would ask is, how often in the last 2 weeks has your coworker shut others out of the conversation? Now, what's interesting about this is in the Cables model that we will work from, the B in that model is around belongingness. And a lot of the research that shows about how important inclusion is, and that when people feel ostracized, pushed outside of the group, it has extremely negative effects, not only on that individual, but just on the effectiveness of team, organization, and engagement overall. We know that, and the research is so strong there in terms of that impact that has. And I think even more so in the environment that we're in right now, when we think about ostracism, in some ways we're somewhat ostracized already, or isolated at least, in that many are not working in an office setting anymore that they used to prior to probably March of this year, at least in the US. That creates its own set of inefficiencies and challenges for individuals. And that's really what this spoke about. And again, what they found was that those individuals that focused on writing down things that they were grateful for each day, there was a positive impact, not only on themselves, how they felt, but also on the surveys that went to the coworkers. The coworkers noticed a difference in terms of their behavior. Again, the results of this really, from the researchers' perspectives, was that the efforts to enhance employees' feelings of gratitude, this gratitude intervention, that it was especially effective in reducing incivility, gossip, and ostracism when those employees practiced this gratitude. And also, the impact was felt by their coworkers. It was observed by their coworkers. Others could see that this actually made a difference. And again, I think this is so important in terms of just one small thing that we can do. And if we're able to find ways for individuals to practice gratitude, or to discuss the importance of it, the impact that it has, I do think that it has the ability to change how people show up in the workplace. And as I've often said, when I initiate a lot of my work in terms of leadership development, the place that I start first is internally. with the leader, because if they are not happy with who they are and they feel good about themselves, happiness, well-being, resilience, then externally they can't be there for somebody else. And it's the same thing with a coworker. If anything, I have seen that consistently those people that are unkind toward others, it speaks more about themselves, about their unhappiness with who they are. And this probably is impacted a great deal by really not feeling as though there are many things for them to be grateful for. You know, they're focused on how things are not going well for them. They're unhappy with who they are. And if that's the case, how can you be there for other people if you are not even able to be there for yourself right now? That's where this needs to start. I know many may be thinking, well, how do I do this? This seems like a lot of work. That there are a number of things. Now, in this study, obviously, they focused on looking or asking individuals to talk about what were they grateful for during their day in terms of work. But individuals can practice gratitude outside of a workplace setting, and there are different things that we can focus on to be grateful for. It could be, in the Power Journal that I've put together, there are suggestions that I make in terms of things like identify 3 things that you appreciate about yourself. Are you a good listener? Are you compassionate? Are you good with details? There are things that when we focus on, what are we good at? Again, I think we probably too often can be difficult on ourselves, and we look at all of our deficiencies. Well, what am I good at? What things am I grateful for in terms of who I am? Another powerful one when we talk about resilience is finding ways to be grateful for the challenges that we're faced with. Because when we can find a way to be grateful for our challenges, what it provides us an opportunity to do is to have control over them, to realize that this challenge, I'm going to benefit from this. There's something that somehow I'm going to grow from this to become stronger. And when we can do that, if we think about that in an office setting, right? If I can be grateful for maybe the challenges that I've had to deal with in terms of relationships with other people, it's allowed me to focus on maybe how my behaviors impact that individual and what things I've been able to do myself to grow and to build better relationships. Practicing gratitude, another thing that you could do is maybe it's involving writing a letter or a note to somebody else to tell them how grateful you are for them, for what they have provided to you. Another way that we really can build on our ability to I'd say not only demonstrate gratitude, but also it's like a ripple effect. We pay it forward, because I guarantee you probably when somebody receives a note from you that expresses your appreciation for what they've done for you, they may be thinking about how somebody did that for them too. And maybe it prompts them to then send a letter to somebody else to do that. There are so many different ways that we can be grateful. One other thing that was not obviously in this study, but I think could be very helpful as well for individuals is if we look at bookending our day. We start our day out in a place of gratitude where we're waking up and we're thinking about what are the things that I'm grateful for? What are the things at work that I'm grateful for? What are the things that I'm grateful for about this current situation that we're in? How can I grow from this? But then at the end of the day, journaling, again, just for a few minutes, provides a great opportunity for us to redirect. We started our day out thinking about gratitude. We end our day thinking about or journaling, writing down what went well for the day. Now, again, I think our nature might be to think about what didn't go well today, or what didn't I get done, or what's challenging that I'm going to have to face tomorrow. But if we can leave the day and go into restorative sleep, and we know the importance of that, in a place of reflecting on what did go well today, it forces us to remain positive. And this is not about being a Pollyanna. This is simply saying that there are things that go well during the day. And why not focus on those? Because that's where our positive energy comes from. That's where our well-being comes from when we focus on those things. And it impacts really every aspect of our lives, whether it's physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. When we're in a place of gratitude, again, research will back up that those things are important. I'll leave just one last piece in terms of the conclusion of this study, that the authors of this study really recognized how little evidence there is out there or focus has been on looking at, yes, we might know that there are problems within organizations, but what do we do about it? How can we break this cycle of gossip or uncivil behaviors or things like ostracism or just other disruptive behaviors? We can identify them, we can identify the problems, but what are some of the treatments that we can use to address this? And this one really focused on gratitude, something that's very simple for all of us to put into practice. It doesn't take a lot of time for us to do that. And if we do it over time, the results really can be extremely beneficial. And that's it. I hope you've found value in this episode today. I'm grateful that you've stayed with me until the end of this to really explore this. And my challenge is find ways on a daily basis to practice gratitude. And do it for a month and see where you end up. I promise you'll be in a better place. And until our next episode, go out and rise above your best. Peace.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Learning from Leaders podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Until next time, keep rising above your best as a leader.